Hello, Salesforce Developers, and thank you for tuning in to today's Code Live. My name's Danielle Larregui. I'm a senior developer advocate at Salesforce, mostly focusing on the Marketing Cloud and Data Cloud platforms. And today we have an awesome topic for you, one that I'm really excited for. So we're going to get a little bit away from some of the platform stuff and come over to the Marketing Cloud side, account engagement specifically, and we are going to cover external actions and account engagement. We have some really good stuff for you on today's stream. So welcome everyone to the stream. Okay, now before I introduce our expert, I just want to say it's really hot in Texas this week. I live in Dallas, Texas, and we have had like some rolling blackouts. I think it's because everyone has had their air condition like up on high because it's been like 110 degrees. So I am hoping that none of those rolling blackouts happen today during the stream because that would just be really bad. But I'm going to go ahead and now bring on our product expert, Christopher Cornett. So just like magic, and make you a little bit bigger there, Chris, because it's like really small. Hi, Chris. Oh, wait, can't hear you, Chris. I think you might be on mute.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm very excited for today, so thank you for having me, Danielle.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you. We got to get rid of some of that platform stuff for a little bit and come over to the Marketing Cloud side. Anything you want to say about yourself, Chris, to introduce yourself to the audience and get them to know you a little bit?
Absolutely. My name is Christopher Cornett. I am a senior product manager with account engagement, responsible for our developer experience. So I really like to geek out on our developer capabilities and marketing. External actions and marketing app extensions is definitely one of those that I'm very excited about.
Yeah, I'm excited about it too. And we actually just put out a blog recently on our, there we go, developer.salesforce.com site. So if you scan that QR code, it'll take you to our developer.salesforce.com site. And then you go to blogs and you will see that recently we just wrote an external actions blog that, I'm taking credit. Chris wrote it.
Oh, you helped out immensely. But yeah, and it's a great resource. It was an attempt to just try to get everything about external actions in one place and kind of a recommended reading list as well, with best tips and tricks weaved through there. So definitely go check it out, especially after this, because it will just strengthen your knowledge of external actions.
Yes. It's a great blog. I read it from beginning to end, and it's a great guide, and Chris offers all of his wisdom in there, tips and tricks and things to help you not hit your head up against the wall, because apparently he has, doing some things with external actions.
So true. Yep, there's a few things that can get you, but if you can avoid those, it's a really awesome feature.
Yes. And also don't forget to join our Trailblazer community, our Dev Trailblazer community. This helps you to also not hit your head up against the wall, because there's other developers on there that are very talented and very knowledgeable on many different platforms. So if you hit up against a problem or an issue, even we scan these communities and answer questions as well. So if you get stuck, have a question, feel free to post it on our Trailblazer community, and hopefully you get the answer that you need on the community. Okay, so that's enough of the QR codes. We're going to move over to something that's very familiar, which is our forward-looking statement. So me or our product expert, Chris, might say something about future functionality coming to the platform. Please make sure that you're making all of your purchasing decisions based off of what is available in Salesforce or account engagement or any of the products that we may mention today, and not anything that we say may be coming in the future. All right. So I think we're ready now. You ready, Chris?
Absolutely. Excited. Okay. Let's jump into it.
I'm excited. And also I have a little plushie here. This is the new Brandy plushie, everyone. And Brandy is very
so jealous.
I'm sure we can find one over to you, Chris.
That would be awesome.
All right. So let's go ahead and get started.
Amazing. So before we fully jump into it, just wanted to go through some prerequisites so you can follow along today if you'd like to live code along with the live code. So the first thing that you'll need to have is a Salesforce org with account engagement. Then next, a Twilio account with an active SMS number. You can sign up for a demo, is my understanding. Then I would recommend download the reference code. So today I'm going to really show you kind of how to hack using the reference code, so then you have a pattern that you can rely on and go back to build other external actions. You'll need to have your Twilio account SID and auth key. That will be required to set up the authentication. And then have the Twilio SMS API specifications handy, because that tells you how to integrate with their SMS send API. And what are we going to be coding today? We will be coding a Twilio SMS marketing app extension that is going to allow marketers to be able to automate sending SMS marketing messages with an account engagement. The picture you see there is a snippet of an engagement studio program, which is how you automate marketing programs with an account engagement. And essentially that is what the external action looks like for sending the Twilio SMS that we will build today. At a high level, just to let you know, marketing app extensions are essentially ways to extend automation. They contain two components: external activity and actions. And we're going to be focused on the actions today. And essentially, an external action is any time a marketer has gone and said something along the lines of, I wish at this point I could do this. That's essentially what an external action does. So when someone completes a form, I want to send them a text, register them for a webinar. Any action that is going to help advance in the customer journey on the marketing side. And so the components that we're going to be using today is name credentials to handle the authentication. I'll walk you through really quickly how to set that up. Then we'll code an Apex invocable action to send the SMS message. Then we'll walk through how to configure a marketing app extension, and then do a quick transactional testing, and finally show you how to add it into Engagement Studio so that it can be used within a marketing program. So the first thing that you'll want to do is we're going to set up the authentication. And so you'll want to log into your Twilio account. It should take you to this page, and you want to grab the account SID and the auth token. This is going to be what we use within the named credential. And so here we'll want to create a new name credential. You want it to be legacy. And then we go and configure it. Twilio's API uses a password authentication. And so essentially you want to set it up as a named principal with password authentication. The username is your account SID, and then your password is the auth key.
And that you might want to just zoom in just a slight bit, Chris.
Oh, absolutely.
There we go. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. Mm-hmm. And so here you have the name principal, the password authentication. And as I mentioned, the username is your account SID and your password is your auth token. And then everything else should be default. And once you save it, just mark what the name is, because you will be referencing that in the invocable Apex code. So now moving on to the reference code, which we're going to be using as our starting base. So this one actually is for a Zoom API request. There are a few differences with Zoom's API versus Twilio that I would like to call out that we're going to have to factor in and as we kind of progress. So Zoom's API is a JSON-based REST API. Twilio's API is Twilio's API is URL encoded, and so there's a slightly different payload, but majority of the process remains the same. So in this reference code, we have an input class, Zoom action request, and it has the invocable variables. This is all the input into an invocable action, which is the base of an external action. Then you have the invocable method, which you have your label and description, and then it's the method add webinar registrant. This is where the API call is going to take place, and we can see in their code they essentially are building the payload using a map in order to do it. I'm going to modify that a little bit in my next step, and then they serialize it in the payload. They set up the HTTP request, set the endpoint, which is the combination of the external name and any relative URI. We don't have to worry about that. I recommend just put the full URL here for the messaging JSON, and you have to replace your account SID. So all you have to do is call out the external action and not construct the rest of the URL. It is a post method. That's going to be the same. We're going to have to change the header of the content type. It returns it, but it's as I mentioned, URL encoded. But once they set the body, they send it, and then they check to make sure everything is good to go. Now,
okay. So I'm just going to pause you for 1 second to see if there's any questions thus far. So if you have any questions, you can ask them in the YouTube chat, and they will pop up over here on the right for both me and Chris to see, and we can answer the questions because I know you went through a lot. So
I think that is
fair. to see if there's any questions thus far. And I know there was one question about the Brandy plushie and how I came across this Brandy plushie. Well, Gilda actually, the question was, did Gilda gift me this? And Gilda actually did gift plushies to Southeast Dreamin'. So if you went to Southeast Dreamin', which is one of the community conferences in the United States on the Eastern Seaboard, you might have gotten gifted a Brandy plushie if you happened to be there. And I happened to be one of those people. So I had the cool new Brandy plushie. There's also some given out at Connections as well. So it doesn't look like we have any questions or any new questions coming in. So I think you're okay to go ahead and proceed, Chris.
All right. Thank you so much. So hopefully everyone is caught up to this point. So the next step is actually just recommendation, but I like to create template classes when I can, because if I know I'm going to create a lot of them, it just makes it easy to rinse and repeat. And so in this step, I essentially went through and just generalized it. This will always change, right? I like the fact that they had included some of the response codes. Those may change but for the most part, they are pretty consistent, with 200s being success messages. I just create an input class called input. Then I don't have to change the references anymore. And then I like to separate out a class with payload, just because to me, it's easier to code that way, to just set the variables and then serialize. And it works really well with JSON, and also will work well with this example. And then the other thing I like to do is make sure to add the success check and a custom exception. So I changed that to API. And the reason behind that, this is something important for external actions, is the system's going to expect an error if it's not successful. And so you will want to make sure to throw that error, so then the system knows to record it as an error and present it to the admins as an issue. If you don't, then it could look like it processed successfully, but the action never actually took place. So this is essentially what I start with. And what we're going to do first is change the variables to support Twilio. So that's what I've done here in this step. I call it the Twilio SMS request. I changed the success criteria to text created. It's also a 201 status. For the input, I look at the API documentation, and the input for kind of the base request is from, body, and to. So the from phone number, the body of the email or the SMS message, and the phone number of who you're going to send it to. And so that's why I've added a variable for to, a variable for body, and a variable for from. Y'all might be wondering why I have from ZZZZ there. That is because from is actually a protected word in the syntax. So we're going to have to do a little bit of a trick here. I'll show you later on. And then for the payload, I just mirror that as well. But the reason I use two classes is, for example, if I wanted to pass in the account SID as a variable, and it's part of the URL, well, then I can't just use this class as the payload class. And so it's just a habit I've gotten into. Then for the invocable method, I set a label for it, send Twilio SMS text, add an appropriate description. I'm calling my method send Twilio SMS text, and it is taking in the input, which is Twilio requests. And so first thing we're going to do is build the payload. And so essentially all I do here, and whatever fields you input, you just essentially map them to the payload class. I like to have debug statements. One thing to note, it is always a best practice to go back and clean these up so that they're not always triggering, but extremely helpful during the development process. Then you essentially just need to serial, or then I would normally serialize this if it was JSON, and then set up the request. So I set up the endpoint using the name credential. I set a header. The content type is actually form URL encoded, which we'll have to do some modifications to support here shortly. The method is post. The set header is accept, and it does return JSON. We don't have to really, besides the status, we're not going to really parse the response today. And then this is the line that sets the JSON payload to it. And now we have a fully configured HTTP request. And so now we set up the HTTP and send the HTTP request. And we're checking the text was created, which means that we were successful. And otherwise, if it's not, we're going to throw this API exception here. So that gets us 90% of the way. And if we were to run this, it actually would work for the most part if Twilio was a JSON API. But I mentioned that it is URL encoded, so we're going to have to do some adjustments here as well. And that's going to require us to use a function that I personally just Googled online because I figured there would be one available for us and copied that into here. So this takes in a map string, which in essence is equivalent to a JSON object. You can map between those pretty easily. It then has it's setting up a string for it to go through, and then it's just cycling through the fields and the values, encoding them in URL so that it's a URL encoded value and a URL encoded key, and they're set according to the format. And then this last step, you just have to remove a final ampersand and then return. And this will change your JSON into URL encoded. So we go back up to this section here where we are constructing our payload, right? So now is also a good time to call out. So here I've introduced two things. So the first one is so essentially here we kind of
And just
put
really
everything in there.
quickly, Chris, just to make sure that we're seeing the correct thing. So I'm still seeing your message resource page. Is that the page you intend to show?
No, it is not.
Okay.
Let me see what's going on here. Let me reshare.
Okay.
It's not flipping back.
Alrighty.
All right, are we back to the code?
Yes, we are seeing
Okay.
US code now. Okay.
All right, let me step back a little bit. So this is the URL encode function. I don't think y'all were able to see that, but ultimately it is taking in a map of strings, which makes it easy to convert from JSON. You have the string here, and then you're just cycling through the key value pairs, encoding those key value pairs. And then this is going to return convert the JSON into XWW form URL encoded format. So to incorporate that, we go back up to here and so we go back up to here. First thing we have to take care of is that protected syntax. And so after we serialize the JSON, we just do a replacement. And so we replace the from ZZ with the actual from that the request is expecting. That's why I use 4 Z's, is because that is not very likely to ever come up in a payload. So I feel pretty safe just doing a mass replace on that.
Yeah. And maybe just zoom in just once on VS Code.
All right.
There we go.
Wait, here we go.
Yeah, that's good.
All right.
Perfect.
Yeah, I love those ultra wide monitors, but it definitely causes some issues when presenting.
It's okay.
Okay, so this essentially is doing that replacement. And then to call the URL encode, we cast it as we deserialize the JSON, cast it as a map string, and then that gives us not technically the JSON body, but the URL encoded body. And then the rest of this remains the same. It adds it from what we've already changed. And now we actually have functioning code that we're going to be able to deploy. So this is what the final looks like. And then to deploy this in CLI, you just deploy to the org. And I had recently deployed it, so nothing changed on this. So now we have an invocable action. So next step is let's just make sure that it works. And so I'm going to now jump over to Salesforce Flow because I find this to be a helpful tool in terms of being able to test. So it looks like the new screen's not up. I will get it pop, but it's a really good way to be able to test your invocable action so that you can differentiate between coding issues and configuring the external action issues. Makes it really simple to distinguish where those are occurring. And so when I switch the screen here, Danielle, let me know if it doesn't transition.
Okay, there we go.
All right. And so we go to, you find flows within Salesforce Setup. I called it just an SMS tester. It's a very simple flow. So it's a screen flow. I bet you can guess what input I have, which is to, from, and the body. And then you go and select your Apex action here. And since I called it send SMS text, but whatever you call that class is what you're going to want to search for. And then you just map the ScreenFlow inputs, the body, the from, and to. And so now I can run this. And actually send it to my phone. And hopefully shortly here, we'll get the ding of confirmation. But it was, so this confirmed everything was successful. I can see that the output was, there was no output, so everything ran successful. There wasn't an error. However, if I did run into an error here, then basically you would want to have your developer console open. And then when you run that flow, if you run that flow again, it'll give you the logs where you can take a look at all your debug statements.
Okay, so I'm just gonna, I think this is a good place to pause really quickly and look at the chat. So we have a question about why are there so many marketing cloud languages instead of using an industry standard language? I will give my take on that, and then I guess Chris, you can give your take, and then we'll get right back into it. So Marketing Cloud has a little bit of a complicated history of acquisitions, and I think that is a lot of the reason why there are still quite a few languages out there for each of the Marketing Cloud platforms, even though they're all under the Marketing Cloud umbrella. What do you think, Chris?
Yes, I think that is a very good description of kind of, how it had evolved. The one thing I would like to note is with account engagement, we are pretty well aligned with the Salesforce developer experience overall. And so what's great is if you create these invocable actions for external actions, if you have a business process that needs it as well, I just showed that you can use it within Flow. So for example, like say I wanted to make a webinar registration, I could create an external action that essentially allows you to be able to automate the registration as part of the marketing journey. Then I could create a Salesforce flow that allows me to say, allow a sales rep to individually sign someone up for that register or for that webinar. And so it gives a fair amount of reuse capability. And so my hope is we're moving more into the direction of collapsing these things versus introducing more, if that makes sense. And the key thing, why do we have to have the configuration, is that's the piece that takes that general artifact that we were talking about and is what makes it connect into account engagement.
Yeah, and I think account engagement, like you said, is way more aligned with the core platform. I mean, look at the user interface and overall look at experience of account engagement. It's more aligned with core, and as Chris mentioned, you can use it with some of the automation tools that you're already familiar with, like Flow and as well as Apex as well. So, great question. All right, go ahead, Chris.
So really the last step that we have left here is to configure the marketing app extension. And so to find this, it's again in setup. You search for marketing app extensions. This will only appear if you have account engagement. So it is restricted by the product. You click on new. And I'm just going to go to an existing one. But when you click on new, it's going to ask you to enter this information. Let me go to the correct one. And so essentially you just enter extension name. It will automatically create an API name for you. And then you have an option to activate in automations. So external actions has a couple criteria that will be required for it to appear in Engagement Studio. This is requirement number 1. Requirement number 2 is that you assign this marketing app extension to a business unit. And then requirement 3 is that you activate the action. So that's the next step here. Is this step just creates the marketing app extension. Then we'll want to click new, which will create a record for the action type. And to walk you through the parameters here that you'll have to fill in is the action name, and then it'll auto-populate the API name for you. This is the marketing app extension is where you select, this is auto-populated. This links back to the app extension. You can provide a descriptive detail of what it does. And then this is really where the magic starts to happen. Is essentially you can search for it. So if you search for Twilio SMS text, it would automatically pop up. I am going to cancel out of that because I want to show you the configuration I set up for this. So once you make that selection, an invocable action schema is going to pop up, and it's going to have all the inputs that you asked for. But here it gives you the option to modify this to work and integrate with an account engagement. And so the property section is essentially each of describing the input fields that are available. And so here you can see properties, the body. The body is the first field, the from, and the to. And so we have those fields. So those fields are automatically mapped in. Now I can do some more advanced things here as well, such as setting defaults or mapping them to prospect field information. And so the body is going to be input every time. So I don't assign any default value. I expect they'll be entered. The from is actually never going to change. It's our company's SMS text number. And so we can set that as a default, and not even have to worry about it. And then for the to, it's the recipient's phone number. This uses the HTML language that marketing or account engagement leverages for tag replacements. So most marketers are very familiar with this syntax. So the next property section is the view of the configuration. And what this does is it configures what to display to the end user in account engagement. And as I mentioned, the only thing I expect marketers to have to input is actually the message they want to send. So I removed all the other components that would have popped up here and just kept the properties body one. And then the final section, surprise, surprise, is required. And it is called required. All 3 fields are required. This is the minimum required input fields. But there are other options. If you look at it, you could enhance this to include a media URL and some of the other options that they have available to you. So once you've configured this, once you configured it, you want to mark it as active in automations and then save this. Once you do that, it is now going to become available within the business units that you assigned it to. And to find it, I went into Engagement Studio, just opened up any program, and then clicked on to add an action. And then you will see that it popped up that invocable action here to be able to send the Twilio SMS. And when I click in it, you see the one configurable field body is available or is being requested for input. The to and from is going to be automatically populated for the marketer, so they can click save. And then when they start running this program, when prospects get to this field, it will send out the text message. It will send out the body that is configured here to that prospect. And Danielle, that's in essence the end state. The final thing once you have this tested, if you wanted to, is you can package this. It uses a metadata called marketing app extensions, which will package the external actions into it. And it can be published on the App Exchange as well, or make it easy to be promoted from your sandbox to production environment. And so that's how you build an external action from beginning to end. And overall, this pattern will work for a vast majority of APIs. Majority of them are JSON, so kind of that starting pattern can be used. But now you also have one for URL encoded forms that is, a minor variation. And so most times, like to build an external action, the hardest thing is getting access to the service you want to integrate with and finding their API documentation. And as always, I guess, authentication can be hairy sometimes.
Okay. Do we have any questions? And thank you so much, Chris. This is really, really good. I fully enjoyed it. All right. Well, as we're waiting for questions, I'm going to ask a question. So, what would you say might be the most challenging part for a marketer looking to get started on external actions?
That is a great question. So I think the biggest challenge for any marketer is really just going to be they're stepping into the dev stage. So in most cases, I would recommend marketers working with their marketing ops teams that typically have the dev resources to support them, support marketers. But if for those that want to venture into this territory, I also don't want to shy away because, with this pattern and kind of, the great thing about APIs is they are pretty standard. You just have to get comfortable with one API, and then your confidence is just going to continue to grow from there. So it's definitely something that can be approachable. But in a lot of scenarios, I would expect marketers to be defining the requirements. And what's helpful there is just to really think about, make sure to provide your engineers what you think the input output should be, and then they can validate that for you versus having a lot of back and forth in terms of what's available, what's not available. It just helps cut straight to the chase. Here's what I want, and then they can tell you if it's available or not.
What has been your favorite APIs that you've worked with so far? I know you've gotten pretty creative.
So actually, Twilio was one that I enjoyed playing around with. I actually used it so I used this in SMS, and then I created a webhook back into Salesforce so that it would record the response as an external activity. And then I started using Engagement Studio program to tell a joke, a knock-knock joke. So that was really fun. I spent probably way too much time on that one just to get a knock-knock joke out of it. But it was really interesting and just really opened my eyes to just how much power this can have.
And a few things I want to call out about that blog post that we mentioned earlier, which also covers external actions end to end, is Chris also talks about setting up your developer environment and some of his favorite tools to work with when working with external actions. So if you want to know what type of code editor you should use or what other tools you should use, all of those are detailed in the blog. And VS Code, I think, is pretty much your favorite editor to work with, right? To work with external actions. Okay.
Yes, because we have a trail that makes it easy to set up, and it's so nicely integrated with Salesforce.
And also, Chris did introduce external actions last year in our release readiness live at Dreamforce that we did last year. So there's also some great content in that chapter on external actions with a little bit of a different example, but that is also out there as a resource, and it's on our Salesforce Developers YouTube channel also. All right. Well, I think that is it. Not seeing really questions coming in on external actions. So thank you so much, Chris. And don't forget, we have that blog post out there on our developer.salesforce.com site. And thank you so much, Salesforce developers, for tuning in. And thank you, Chris, for this wonderful demo.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you for letting me come and present to y'all, and hope y'all, have fun building in external actions.
All right. Goodbye, everyone.